Welcome to the Football Show on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Roth, Alison McConnell and Tam McManus are with me today on the show at the end of an exhilarating season. Just one match to digest and discuss, certainly in Scotland on the Saturday, and that was of course the Scottish Cup final. The playoff final, we now know who's going to stay in the Scottish Premiership, and we'll also cast an eye over what happened in the English FA Cup final. Here's what's coming up.
Brendan Rodgers hailed Celtic's Scottish Cup win over Rangers, but the Hoops boss admitted the performance on the day wasn't one of their best.
You're not going to win titles always playing beautiful football all the time, you know.
Philippe Clement believes the call to discount Rangers' goal at Hampden was a huge decision, as he insisted his players were consistently fouled.
See also how all the Celtic defenders are grabbing my players and having their arms around their neck.
Don Cowie reveals talks will now take place over his future at Dingwall after Ross County secured their top flight status with an emphatic win in the playoff final.
Our pure focus was on making sure we kept this club in the Premier League, and then we said once we do that we can have a proper conversation.
Ian Murray admitted Raith Rovers can use the Staggies as a benchmark after his side failed in their bid to be promoted to the Scottish Premiership.
Put you to the sword if you give them opportunities, and that's the lower end of the Premier League, and again that's what we aspire to get to that level one day.
Yeah, lots of things to talk about on the programme. You can give us your view on the Scottish Cup final and the playoff as well. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. Thank you to so many of you for your support and increasing support throughout the season. And hopefully you will be with us in Germany. PLZ Soccer off to the Euros to back Scotland all the way. Who knows, it could be a little bit of history if Steve Clarke gets Scotland into the next stage. We certainly hope so. And if you download the PLZ Soccer app, then you'll get all the breaking news and unique video content at your fingertips. So thank you to you all, including so many of you who enjoy downloading our podcast as well. Well, Scottish Cup final. Ruffy, rank rotten.
Yeah, it wasn't a classic, but both the Celtic manager and the Rangers manager have been telling us for the last 2 months it's not all about the performance, it's just about winning. And Celtic have done it again. Obviously, it wasn't a class. I can't think of any player in any of the two teams who was outstanding. I don't think anybody grabbed the game with the scruff of the neck. And in the end, the big player turned up at the right time. Probably the wrong time for Rangers, but at the end, I think the goal was good enough to win. Obviously, it was good enough to win the game.
Yeah, everybody who's a football purist probably won't be watching that game again on DVD, but Brendan Rodgers, the Celtic manager, says sometimes it's not all about winning beautifully.
You just know coming into it that you're not going to win titles always playing beautiful football all the time. You know, I think we'd spells in the game. We lacked a little bit of energy, I thought. It's our 50th game of the season, and I thought in the final third of the pitch, we lacked that little bit of energy. Hence, bringing on Adam and Paolo to give us a little bit more power and threat. But they're always going to be tense.
Yeah, of course, from the Rangers manager's perspective, I don't think he was too happy that VAR disallowed their goal.
And then if you have the scenario also that you score goals and they are disallowed in that way, that's also at that moment a disappointment if I compare with the push that Scales can give to Dusan Sterling in the first half. Around 16, in 16, I don't know, I didn't see the situation back, but it's a much bigger push than what happened with Joe Hart today. If I see also how all the Celtic defenders are grabbing my players and having their arms around their neck, around their waist, it's a really big call to disallow that goal.
Well, lots to talk about as far as the content of the game. It might not have been a classic. If I can make an observation and get your thoughts on it, Alison, I thought Philippe Clement got his tactics. He couldn't get them spot on because he doesn't win the game. But I thought he got his tactics right, because if they played football against Celtic, they were not going to win the match. So he had to work out a way to stifle Rangers. And I thought he did that to stifle Celtic. I thought he did that effectively and was gambling on a set piece to eventually win the game. That gamble almost paid off. We can debate the Joe Hart push in a minute, but it almost paid off. He had to do something different, and he almost won the cup for Rangers.
Yeah, I think he changed the midfield just to stop that Celtic triumvirate from dominating the way that they have in recent encounters. And I think Celtic did look leggy. I thought Matt O'Reilly and Rio Hatate, who have been so instrumental to the push for the title, were quiet. I didn't think they had a great influence across the game. So I thought they made life difficult for Celtic in terms of working at pressing them, at closing down the space, at making it a fairly stodgy game. But I think you would struggle to think of any clear-cut chances that troubled Joe Hart. I think you could say the same about Jack Butland for Celtic. I think, other than the goal, I thought it was a fairly turgid affair across the entirety of the 90 minutes. But I think they worked hard to stop Celtic playing without quite doing enough to go and ask questions of Celtic in the final third. And I think you're right. I think it was try and nick something at a set piece, and it very nearly worked.
Yeah, Tam, if you are looking at the way they've lost games before, Alison makes a very good point. Joe Hart, if he did have to make a save, it was a save that you could throw your hat on it. So they didn't really have that great threat in the final third either. But I thought over the piece of the game, and I know this will rankle with some Celtic fans, because as Kenny Dalglish used to say, it doesn't matter about the content of the game. The scoreline at the end is the only thing that matters. But I thought Rangers, their tactics worked well, and they were in that second half in the ascendancy, and thought they had the goal, which wasn't.
Yeah, I thought that Rangers were pretty physical. I thought that they bossed the midfield. For the first time this season, Celtic's midfield were bossed. I thought the three in there, Diamande, Cantwell and Raskin, nullified Celtic's three in there, and it made Celtic go longer a little bit. And that this obviously they've not got very tall players up front, Celtic, and Rangers, snapped most of those balls up. But listen, I think that we'll talk about the decision in a minute. I think that Rangers in the second half were the team in the ascendancy, but without looking like scoring. And I thought that the substitutions that Brendan Rodgers made were at the right time. I thought Kyogo was poor. I thought Hatate was poor. I thought he took those two off and then replaced them. And the two guys that come on really gave Celtic a lift. And towards the last 10-15 minutes, I thought Celtic might nick this. Just with the subs that come on. Rangers will be disappointed, but I thought he'd done everything he could. Rangers they're just not got the players. They've just not got the squad depth to trouble Celtic this season in one-off games. They nearly done it at the weekend there. But at the end of the day, Celtic just win games like that. Games that are tight, you always fancy Celtic to nick it, and they've done that at the end. And it was the subs that combined to obviously to make the goal. So I think Rangers, the supporters will take something out of the game that they could match Celtic again for 75, 80 minutes. But at the end of the day, until they beat Celtic in a one-off big game, I think that Celtic will continue to dominate domestically. Well,
that's a good point, which we'll discuss a little later on because of the ramifications of what could happen in the summer. But Ruffy, on that point there that Tam was talking about, you must, managers live or die by the decisions they make. And Brendan Rodgers, time and time again, knows how to beat Rangers when it gets to the clinch. I think he deserves tremendous credit for putting the substitutes on and changing the game, because it was the first time Bernardo beats a man. Suddenly you've got that kind of 2-on-1, but he decides to drive forward, creates all sorts of problems. Rangers back off. And then his shot, again, I think from your point of view, it'd be interesting to see what you thought of Butland. But, I look back at Brendan Rodgers' first time around, they get a man sent off in Shimonovic at Ibrox. Everybody thinks he'll shut up shop. He puts an attacker on and wins the game 3-2. He makes those decisions which change the games, and I think Brendan Rodgers deserves tremendous credit for that.
Well, Tam's made the point. The two substitutions that Brendan Rodgers made won them the game. And I think Rangers used the 5 substitutes, and I don't think any of them influenced the game whatsoever. So you have to give him credit, for making these decisions. There wasn't many chances in the game. I think Raskin was a bit leg weary when Bernardo got the ball and went.
Could have pulled him down, I thought.
Yeah, I thought he was trying to foul him because he was tired. I think at that stage of the game, both sets of players who'd been on the park for that length of time looked tired. It was a long, long season, and he looked fresh when he went by him, and he had the legs to keep going and obviously have the shot. And as it turned out, that was the way to the winner.
Okay, Tam, the disallowed goal. Is it the correct decision?
I think it is, Peter. I think that it's a definite push in the back. I don't think you had to push him either. I think Joe Hart was flapping a little bit at it. listen, he'll argue he get pushed in the back so he can't come for it, but I thought it was the right decision. I thought the referee got most of the big decisions right. The one that come off Davis's hand, I thought it came off his stomach first and then onto his hand, which is not a penalty kick. So he got that one right. And I thought the one that, was it Scales pulled back Sterling?
Yeah.
Was just outside the box, pushed the push.
Yeah.
I thought it was just outside. If that was in the box, Peter, I think they might have.
Oh, I looked at it
might
first
have had a
time,
look. Did you think it was? I thought it was just outside the box.
I'm in the press box and I looked at it and I went, that's a penalty.
Yep.
But then obviously replays would have allowed him the chance to say, where did the offence happen?
I think if that's in the box, Peter, it's a penalty kick.
It was in. They didn't look at either. They didn't look at either of them.
Well, this is the thing that kind of annoys people. It annoys managers when you get to a situation you say, surely that is worth a look because there is a clear and obvious error. If you're saying that's not a foul, and I automatically turned to Alice in the press box and went, that's a penalty. And then we had to look again because there was such a huge cry from some of the Celtic players when Davison it came up off his hand. I thought, that's a penalty as well.
That one's
coming off his stomach.
Came off his, just glanced off his stomach.
I don't think it was a penalty. Like if you and I are looking at it, and he says that handball, no. But if you look at the decisions that have been given this season and the decisions that VAR has given, the one at Tynecastle for Hearts against Celtic was almost identical.
Which they made the mistake of.
To that, which they then said was a mistake.
I think the O'Reilly one was identical at Parkhead. Remember, he was edge of the 18-yard box.
Yes.
And he had his hand down here and it came off of somebody. So these penalties have been given.
Consistency is the problem.
Yeah, I think every manager and every team in the Premiership will say, well, I had a penalty against me for less than that.
Yeah. Joe Hart himself, I think his bottle had crashed, as they say in Glasgow. He thought the foul wasn't going to be given.
Your heart's always in your mouth because you don't know. Like it came from behind me, so I don't know who pushed me. You know, I didn't know what was going on behind me. But I felt set for the cross. Obviously, they had a plan to cross on me, and as soon as I got ready to deal with it, someone pushed me. And I don't think my team would have done that. So I was confident someone pushed me, but it was just whether it was a Celtic or Rangers player.
Yeah, in the end, it took a wee while, but Nick Walsh eventually goes back and awards the free kick to Celtic, which was a huge relief. And in a sense there, you're saying to yourself, you mentioned there that last 15 minutes. And I think Leon Balogun mentioned after the match, just that sense of how to play the game, how to build their confidence and hang in right to the end was the difference that swayed this match in Celtic's favour.
I think the edge this season that they had over us was probably a bit in confidence, and that they turned up and delivered when they needed to, and that's where we fell short. It's not what you feel right now, again going back to the rational side of things, but if we reflect on our season, it started really, really tough. We had a great comeback. You can't take that away from us, no matter how disappointed you are. But then in the end, results count, and the main target we did not achieve.
Yeah, it's a very good point, worth discussing as well, just as we get to the tail end of, what this means over the summer months. But over and above that, there's a number of players who didn't step up to the plate, didn't grab the game the way you expected them to. As far as Rangers were concerned, and I mentioned the other set pieces, Alice and I were watching the game, Ruffy, and there were 3 or 4 really good deliveries from James Tavernier right underneath the bar, which put the keeper under some pressure, and they managed to, get the danger away. But those were the key moments where Rangers were looking to capitalise.
Yeah, well, obviously they've practised it and they've identified that it's possibly a weak spot, I don't think any goalkeeper likes the ball getting thrown in right on top of him when it's a packed area and you've got to come forward over bodies. I'm like Tam, I'm not 100% sure that Joe Hart was going to punch that. He was coming to punch it, but he had to come over bodies. I think the push got him out of jail a wee bit, but you don't know that because it's done now, but it was a push, there's no doubt about it, and that's what VAR's for. Well, that's why we want it. Because I never saw the push the first time I saw it.
I thought he flapped it, Ruffy.
Yeah, and then that's what VAR's for, to look at these situations. And thankfully, I think everybody would agree they got it right.
I think most of the Rangers fans would have been absolutely happy with the effort and the way they went about their plan, Tam. But in the end, it didn't work out. As Liam Balogun said there, I think they were scuppered in the first half of that season. You know, persevering with Beale obviously came back to haunt them. That start really killed them.
Yeah, they got off to a poor start, Peter. But as Leon said there, they got themselves back in it. They got their noses in front again, and they just had to. You know, they could have not won a game against Celtic this season and probably won the league. But those three results, St Johnstone, Motherwell and Dundee, absolutely killed them. It put them behind the 8 ball, and they had to go to Parkhead and win, which for me they were never going to do anyway. So they deserve credit for getting back into it. Philippe Clement will take some, you know, solace with that going into next season. But until they beat Celtic in a big game, Peter, until they can get over the line in a big game against Celtic, whether that's a league game or a cup game, Celtic are going to continue to have the hoodoo over them and just keep beating them, Peter, because Celtic have shown that they can go and beat the rest to get stronger as the season goes on. Rangers have still to prove that for me.
Would you re-sign Balogun and Sima?
Yeah, I would. I don't know if they've got the money for it. I think is he at Brighton, Peter? Where is he?
I think
he's on loan, isn't he?
Yeah, but by all accounts, he's keen to stay.
Well, if Rangers can afford them, I think he showed in the first, before he got injured, that he was a key player for Rangers. Balogun was one that they got back in on a free in the summer, and I think he's come in and done well. He's a big boy as well. I think he can come in as well for next season, but I was quite impressed with Raskin. He's not been cited. I thought he had a good game at the weekend, Diamande. So they've got some players in there that they could be looking to keep, but they've still got to, in the forward areas, Peter, they're still lagging way behind Celtic for me. Dessers come off, you know, I think he's got an injury. But in the final third, Rangers, they just, bar set pieces, bar, as Ruffy says, putting the ball in on top of Joe Hart, they didn't create any other chances for me against Celtic.
Just on the goal, Ruffy, Butland at fault?
Oh, he's at fault. I think he'll openly admit it. A goalkeeper of his quality shouldn't be spilling something like that. I never saw the clips of it behind the goal. I only saw all the shots that were forward. It must have taken a swerve.
It was a little swerve.
It must
Not
have
as much
taken
as
a swerve.
Zico in Spain.
No,
but it did have a wee
I wish
swerve.
you'd just go over that. But no, it must have, because a goalkeeper of his quality doesn't anticipate a shot going into the corner, so he's been deceived a wee bit, and it just shows you how unlucky he can be. He gets a hand to it. It could have went anywhere, but it goes right.
Good striker play, but for Ida falling in.
I was just about to say,
you know, good strikers. You know, the gamble. John Robertson.
And he actually, if you get a chance to see it again, when Bernardo was coming forward, he actually checked it.
Yeah.
He actually checked it from the centre half to give himself a bit of space in case it did come out.
Yeah.
And but I just thought he was unfortunate to be Player of the Year this year, best player, up nominations and everything, and then it just shows you goalkeepers you're always vulnerable to do something like that. Look at Neuer in the what's it, Champions League semi-final. Yeah. These things happen. You either get away with it or you don't get away with it. But at that level, unfortunately for him, he didn't get away with it.
You won't be aware of this from a striking point of view, Alison, but I might as well enlighten you of it. My great pal John Robertson used to say, I always used to anticipate going into the box and taking the chance that the goalkeeper will spill it. And 9 times out of 10, when it was Ruffy, he knew that the ball would drop to him and bang. That's why John Robertson get 27 Edinburgh Derby goals.
I'll never forget the time we played at Tynecastle, and it was a really wet conditions, right? It was really torrential, and the ball got played through, and I ran it to the edge of the 18-yard line. There was nobody there. I just ran out, but I slipped. And of course, wee Robbo was there, and I'm not kidding you. As he went round me, I could hear him laughing as he ran into the net with the ball.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure Jack Butland could hear Adamida laughing. But the one thing I expect, and this is an interesting point, that Jack Butland, I expect someone to bid for him in the summer, and I think he'll leave Rangers. I'm led to believe there's a clause in his contract for a certain price. So I think Butland will be one of those sellable assets for Rangers, because no matter what way you look at it, he's got to get him money. You know, they've been courting investors. They've been desperately looking for someone that can really bankroll the chance to close the gap on Celtic. So maybe a Butland sale can bring in a Shankland or somebody else as well as any other additional money that Rangers are able to find for Philippe Clement.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. I think certainly there will be interest in him this season. I think he's had a fantastic campaign. I know he's maybe blotted his copybook there in the final, but I think overall he's he's been worthy of a fair few points for Rangers this season. Some big saves at big points. I think certainly the question will be asked. I think if you're in Rangers' position, from a business sense, it absolutely would make sense to say, here is an asset we can sell and then reinvest it into the restructure and the rebuilding of our first team squad. And Rangers have when you look back, Rangers always seem to have a knack at picking up good goalkeepers. They always have. They seem to sign really strong keepers. I think they would fancy that they'd be able to replace them and also put them funnel the funds through into the first team, because they need, I would say, at least 5 or 6 players.
I would agree both.
Kind.
I
would agree with both of you on that account, but you have to convince the supporters. The supporters will want to know why we have to sell our best player. I know what you're saying, and you're right in what you're saying, but supporters don't see it that way. All of a sudden you're shipping our best player who won us so many points this year, and now we have to go out and find somebody else.
Yeah, but the other thing about it, Tam, is the supporters are not that important these days, because quite simply, when you get a financial situation and a career situation where Jack Butland will say to himself, well, I played really well for Rangers, I'm not in that England squad, I still think I've got a chance to be an England goalkeeper. His agent will be saying to him, listen, you've managed to restore a bit of credibility and people know what you're about. Now you've got to go back down to England where you played to try and re-establish yourself, to let people see down here that you can replicate the form that you showed in Scotland.
Yeah, listen, I think every football player, professional football player, wants to get to the English Premier League now, Peter. It's the best league in the world. It's the richest league in the world. You know, everybody wants to go there and play. There's 3 teams that have come up, just been promoted. You know, maybe they would fancy him. You know, a Southampton or an Ipswich or a Leicester. I think he's probably a wee bit better than that. I think he's maybe mid-table Premier League, and he's played down there before and knows how good the league is. So for me, I think his agent will be touting him to other clubs. I think he's done great at Rangers, but he's probably come up to Rangers just to get yourself back in the shop window, get playing regular again, to try and get yourself back down to the English Premier League. And I think there'll be a lot of teams. Rangers got him for nothing. Is that they got him in a free? Jack Butland.
Yeah, I think
they got him in a free. So they're talking 10 million. 10 million to Rangers is massive money. That's massive for the coffers.
I think so. I think too that supporters are quite savvy about stuff like that. I know what you're saying about losing your best player, but I think they know the lay of the land. They've missed out on the bounty that would come through Champions League football now. They can still make it there if they can get through the qualifiers, and I think they're seeded now, given results elsewhere this weekend. But I think they know Celtic will cash in probably on Matt O'Reilly. There'll be big money coming in. Celtic are a very strong financial footing anyway, plus the Champions League money. I think if you look at it logically from a supporter's perspective, you can see there has to be an area to bring in funds. Celtic have done it so successfully across the last 2 decades. Sell your best players, bank it, move on and repeat the cycle.
He is 31, Ruffy. It's not as if he's a young guy.
No. From his point of view, if an English club comes along and you get the wage, we all know the wages get trebled and he's down there. If it's a Premier team, he'll be back in the limelight. There's no doubt about that. I just think if the Rangers make that the first person who's going to be out the door, it sets a statement out to the Rangers fans that we don't have any money. And Clement keeps talking about we're going to rebuild. He's talking about 7, 8, 9 players. You're not going to build up that many players. What do you think you'd go for? 12 million? Butland?
I think 10 million. Yeah. I think the Rangers would minimum 10 million. Yeah.
For me, it just shows you again that if Rangers had any money to go out and splash, they wouldn't sell them. So to me, it sends out a message to the supporters. We're still struggling for cash. We're still struggling if we're going to sell our best player.
How many? I don't necessarily.
Because Celtic, if a bid comes in for Matt O'Reilly, Celtic will let O'Reilly go, but they don't need the money for it.
No, but
who could you
get? I don't think the big problem is people now looking and saying. Admittedly, when a player like that of that calibre goes out the door, you actually start to think, oh, come on here, you now need to find a replacement for him. But the biggest problem Rangers have is not whether they're incredibly cash strapped as they were before. The biggest problem is it's not that you've got an amount of money. The question is that amount of money enough to close the gap and go past Celtic? And the answer right now is emphatically no. Emphatically no, because Tam, Celtic have got, listen to this, this is where this scenario comes from, a cup final win like this. Celtic have got 72 million in the bank. even with the money that they've had to pay out for various things, and including the training centre, they then have a situation where they've won the league, they get their money for that and all their positions from there. They get the season ticket renewals, which have come in. They'll get merchandise. They'll get 60 million for the Champions League. They'll sell Matt O'Reilly. You can debate how much money, 20 million or upwards for him. They'll get a kickback from the add-on from Frimpong if he joins Manchester United or anyone else in the summer. And then suddenly you've got other players that they're going to offload who just basically haven't cut the mustard. So you're talking minimum, even if I was lowballing this estimate, £150 million at their disposal against a Rangers side that really has to, in my mind, I think Philippe Clement is right. I think they need a clear out. I think they need a change of player.
I agree with everything you've said, Peter, but even if Celtic had signed a goalkeeper for nothing and we're getting offered 10 million for him, they'd be taking it. Doesn't matter how much money, it's just financial, it's good business financially. I know Ruffy's saying Rangers have not got a lot of money, but even if Rangers had £200 million in the bank, to sign a goalkeeper for a free in the summer then sell him for 10-50 million after a year is great financial business, and they're going to do it anyway. And that they need to do it because I think that Rangers might have 6, 7, 8 million, say, to buy players. If they get an extra 10, and say there's another 5-6 million to the manager, it's big money for them. It's strengthening the team.
I think it's where they've been stung in the past too. If you look at guys running down their contracts, like Morelos, like Kent, like not cashing in when the asset's hot, when you can bank a bit of money, has been so costly, not just in a financial sense, but also then in the ability to restructure the team.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I think Rangers, they'll obviously, in my mind, have to replace the goalkeeper. The back four needs major reconstruction. The middle of the park needs something better than what they have on offer at the moment. There's no point in saying Raskin had one good game or, Cantwell subbed off. And you're saying to yourself, the Rangers fans are not convinced that Dessers is going to fire them to a title. Now I could look there and say to myself, there's easily 6 or 7 players that they need as starting players, Ruffy. That's my point from a Rangers perspective.
But then you have to go, what market are we delving into here? What are we getting in and buying £1 million players? I know they brought the boy in the centre half, I think he was 2 million. Is it 1 million, £2 million players?
I don't know, but I think any money they get from Butland, I think they should buy Shankland right away.
Yeah. I actually saw a wee bit of Clement's interview saying he's not happy with the backroom people. He's not happy with the medical staff. He was insinuating that there's too many players injured and they're not coming back quick enough.
Yeah.
So he's going to change all that as well. He seems to see a lot of things at the club that need changing.
Yeah, he did actually highlight the fact that he wasn't happy with 10, 12 players not back in there. So that's the predicament for Rangers. From a Celtic perspective, Alison, I've lowballed it at 150 million. You've got a manager there who, our whole axis of analysis and opinion is like anybody in the broadcast, anybody in the written, anybody on radio. All of these outlets change their mindset in view when it comes to August to December. There's a more critical eye on the gap between Celtic and Rangers and obviously the other clubs in Scotland when they hit Europe. And Brendan Rodgers, for me, if he wants to, a wry smile at some people who were his doubters, he's perfectly entitled to do it. But August to December, he's got to have a meeting with that board to say, listen, it's not 10 projects. It's 4 quality players to add to the squad to get a situation where they can win 2 games maybe in the Champions League without putting the Celtic fans through the same old movie that's been happening since 2003.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. I hear what you're saying. I think, listen, he's had 2 windows already where he's basically said, I want quality over quantity. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the summer. I still think it's what Celtic need are players that can come in and go straight into the first team, that are ready to contribute. You're looking at guys that maybe aren't in the 20, 21, 22 bracket that you're then going to sell on 2 or 3 years' time. You maybe want a couple just hitting their peak, mid-20s, ready to hit their peak and contribute. It's very difficult. But I think certainly that's what he'll be looking to add in the window. Whether that's sufficient to then go into the Champions League and compete, I don't know. I think there's a huge gulf in class when what you've seen over recent seasons when Celtic have been in and competing, that it's quite a big ask to try and close that significantly. And this season will be interesting too because of the different format that the competition plays out in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tam, I'm not buying the narrative. I think it's been something that's been spun consistently by Celtic's PR and other people who basically are selling people a message which they're buying into. Not one Celtic fan have I met said Celtic should spend 10 million on a player. What they've said is they want to compete with clubs like a Copenhagen, where you should be able to give them a run for your money. To be able to go into games in the Champions League where at home they're going to be difficult to beat, and they might be able to produce those memorable nights where they can maybe take the odd scalp. But the teams in third pot, fourth pot, maybe a second pot at a push, they want to see a better home record and something happening maybe away from home. The record is abysmal, and for this constant 20 years of a spin, we can't compete, is a nonsense. Other clubs with less budgets have been able to do it. I think Alison's right on how many people they probably need. They need 4 or 5, and that's not any of us. That's the manager telling them he wants the quality. And for me, that's why Brendan Rodgers was brought back. I can see Celtic, with the money they have at their disposal right now, unless Rangers get investment, I can see Celtic heading on to another 9 in a row. They are miles ahead of Rangers off the pitch. And on the pitch, Philippe Clement's got to try and work out a way with better players to destabilise a very good coach in Brendan Rodgers. And for me, Brendan Rodgers was brought back for Europe.
Yeah, listen, a lot of points there. I think in terms of Celtic in the Champions League, you mentioned other clubs that do well. The reason they do well is they're playing in a competitive league. Copenhagen, Club Brugge, Victoria Pilsen, they don't win the league by 20 points every season. They're tested every week, Peter. They're tight leagues, so they're tested. I think we play in a poor league. So Celtic are not getting tested week in, week out. So I think the Copenhagens and the Pilsens and teams like that who actually do quite well, they do it because they're getting tested every week. Celtic can get through the motions every week here against St Mirren's, and no disrespect, Kilmarnock, Ross Counties. They can win the game easily. They can play their B team and win the game. So I think from that point of view, yes, those teams have done well, but I think because they're playing it in a more competitive league than we are. I think in terms of what
you think it's too much for Celtic fans to expect to try and win 1 or 2 games?
No, I don't, Peter. But the problem you've got is Celtic can't buy players from England unless it's the Championship. Even the Championship might be out of question in terms of wages. They can't go to Germany, they can't go to France because they're on too much money. They need to go to, I'd say maybe Portugal, Denmark, the Czech Republic, places like that, and sign their best players where they're not getting a lot of money, Peter. It's hard to attract. The only carrot for players coming to Scotland is the Champions League. They're not going to come to play in the Premier League here, Peter, and playing Scottish football.
But with all due respect, Tam, everybody knows that. They've known that for 20 years. It's not the problem. The problem is they're signing players who are not good enough to even play in Champions League matches. That's the problem with them. It's 10 and 12 players. You could easily throw a blanket over them and say, no, I'm sorry.
That's another argument, Peter. That's the recruitment side.
Well, this is what they need to change the recruitment.
Yep.
You've got a manager who's only in a year back here, who had to win the fans over, which he has done. But even he, whether he's been reeled in or had his knuckles wrapped, didn't wait too long out of July and August, Ali, to turn around and say to people, we haven't got the players.
Well, he made it clear.
He did it in January as well.
Windows. Yeah. It's whether I think the question is how you do it. Like if you want to go and bring in someone of that ilk and quality, the problem's not the fee or the transfer fee. The problem is the structure that you have at the club in terms of
the wages.
The wages.
They're never going to break that ceiling.
You can't commit to a 3 or a 4 year contract on big money that one upsets the apple cart that you have just now, where people will be on a ceiling. You can't break it, and you can't necessarily sustain it over the next 3 or 4 years without fearing that then you get into trouble. I think to do what you're saying and to go and properly compete at Champions League level, I think is a financial gamble that you're never going to see.
Financially complete. Listen to me what I'm saying. 20 years, the record in European football is abysmal. I am not saying compete. I am saying that the Celtic fans expect to win 1 or 2 games in the group stages. If they can get to, which Gordon Strachan and Neil Lennon managed to do, if they can get a situation where they get a half-decent draw, they can somehow get a knockout phase game, which they've managed to do. But in the last 10 years, they've just been spanked relentlessly.
I would agree with you on that front, on aspects of it. The other thing you'd say is when Celtic were competing in the Champions
Different
League,
playing field.
look at where the players that they had come from. Chris Sutton,
6 million.
Neil
Hartson.
Lennon, John Hartson, Alan Thompson, all big players that would now in a
Celtic were
contemporary
signing them from
playing
the Premier
field,
League.
Celtic would not possibly be able to recruit. Or
Ali, that
afford.
was 20 years ago. We're
and that was the last time that they
talking,
were
we're
really
talking
competing
now
at Champions
with a
League
club with
level.
150 million in the bank. This club will have about 150 million in the bank, and if you think the Celtic fans are going to put up with, here comes the Champions League theme, and 5 minutes later we're going to get battered, because that is the story.
See, the minute the draw is made in August, try and get a ticket for a Champions
Absolutely,
League game.
and
They
that's
will
what
go,
the-
because
that's
people
what the board rely
people
on.
Go, people do
Absolutely.
go, and they
The board
will
rely
go.
on that almost. It's almost like a faith to them, Ruffy, that they rely on it. My only point here is this: Brendan Rodgers wants 3 to 4 quality players. I mean, we've talked about Philippe Clement looking for 6 or 7. Brendan Rodgers wants 4 quality players that he knows he can rely on in a starting 11 that might give him a half-decent chance of getting a couple of results that Celtic fans can celebrate in European football. I don't need an argument of, oh well, they'll drop down to the Europa League, oh well, it's not a good standard. That's not the excuse. The manager's brought in, and the recruitment, he has to change the mindset of Celtic Football Club's recruitment policy and say, just give me 3 or 4. I'll highlight them. We'll get some that have been highlighted to us. Give us 3 or 4 nuggets from across Europe, or maybe some from closer to home, that we can have a go and promise them either in a loan deal, Champions League football, and from August to December, that calibre of player, you can enjoy yourself playing and putting yourself in the shop window. And the only downside to that calibre of player is, I'm sorry, but January it's going to get really cold, the rain will be pissing down in your head, and you'll be playing crap teams from the Scottish Premier League. That's the selling point. See if I've got a Porsche, I don't start telling you about the rust underneath it, Ruffy. I try and sell you the badge of, by the way, we're going to go into the Dakar Rally. I'm not going to say you haven't got a fucking hope in hell of winning anything after it. You know what I mean? Calm down, have a think about it.
Can we beat that? Aye.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, you lot have been brainwashed.
Oh, no,
not
I'm
brainwashed,
Peter.
Peter. That's the fact that we
The manager is the man who, if you read between the lines, said, get me 3 or 4 quality players. We all think he's been brought back.
Do you think he'll get them in the summer?
I think he will.
I don't think he will.
I think he
he'll
will.
get some.
I think he'll get 3 or 4 quality
I
players.
think
No, as I was
See
saying,
if he doesn't, by the way,
think
they'll not be going for Brendan Rodgers. They'll be going for the obvious candidates who have got this stupid recruitment policy.
yeah, I think for the last 2 years in the Champions League, the supporters have hung on in there because of you saying the big lights and the teams coming and all that. But I now think there was a breaking point where we're fed up getting stuffed. We're fed up being bopped in the league. We're fed up with 1 point. We're fed up not getting in the Europa. And I think that's what they have to change. But as I was saying about the Rangers, like Butland leaving and who else is going to come in and what kind of money, Celtic are the same. Is Bernardo worth 6 million?
Would you buy him?
Is the big boy up front worth 5 million?
Would you buy him?
6.
Aye,
Easy
6.
to
Would you buy him?
For Champions League?
Yeah.
Is he a Champions League player? Striker?
Not in my mind.
Not in my mind either, and I don't know about Bernardo either. So they've got...
You can't get a Champions League striker for 6 million.
No,
They're paying 20
Absolutely,
for him.
but you've got to say, so you're just going to go with the goal. You're just going to go with
Go
these
with Ida.
players.
He's young enough to improve.
23.
Yep.
So,
Would you take
an
Bernardo?
international player.
I would.
I think Bernardo offers something a bit different, especially when I think you're going to lose O'Reilly. I would go for Bernardo and Ida. I think Ida's done enough. He scored big goals across the last 5 months.
Is it?
But Ida is a classic point in case. The boy came in as a third choice striker from Norwich at the end of the window. Too much scoffing from Celtic fans. Who is this guy? This isn't the player. This isn't the calibre of player that we want. We want to be going bigger. We want to be going better. Going out, it doesn't always correlate that if you go and spend £10 million and a big salary, that someone's going to be in and be a success. What I think Celtic needs, 2 aspects to this, and it's not being brainwashed, it's just seeing the world from a different perspective that you do. What I think has to happen is there's two things. The recruitment has to be better, because Celtic have spent a lot of money. If you look at the last 3 or 4 windows, there's a lot of money being spent. Has it been spent well? That's a different question. There isn't an argument to say that they've not spent money. They have to be smarter with how they invest it and the type of players that they come. Secondly, if I was in any way involved in recruitment at Celtic, the guy I'd be going to sign is an Austin McPhee. Someone to come in and say, the set pieces are appalling. When was the last time Celtic looked as though they were going to score on a regular basis from any set piece? And the flip side of that is how vulnerable they look at set pieces defensively. I would spend my money on things like that can strengthen the team, that can help you, and that aren't necessarily going to put you in a precarious financial position. Yeah. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be looking at quality. 3 or 4 pieces of quality, but what is that to you? What does that mean to you?
Well,
What's
let me explain to you what it means, right? I'll explain to you right now. You have a situation, and can I just mention at this point, and I'll offer this because sometimes I think context gets lost. To offer the balance on this, Celtic and their board at times have recruited some absolute golden nuggets. And there's no point in turning around and saying for the last 20 years it's all been rubbish, because that would be very, very unfair on them. They have managed to unearth some really good golden nuggets who have been some viewed as projects, but they've gone on to be sold for good money. So you have to offer balance. My point on his recruitment should be that the biggest strategic change is not looking at people within 19 to 25 years of age bracket who must be sold on. I think they should say to themselves, Brendan, if you want quality, your point, everybody's point, you can't get it for 6 million. We can't buy Champions League standard.
You're looking for a finished article?
No, do you know what I would say, Tam? I would say, okay, give me 3 or 4 quality, but of the 3 or 4 quality, is there any chance we could maybe get a 32-year-old who's been over the course, who's a bit of experience, who can come in and add that little bit extra that can add to the younger players and help them along the way? Somebody who's had a great career at their club and in Europe, and you know they've got that quality, and say, listen, we'll push the boat a wee bit out for them.
That comes again to the ceiling of what Celtic are prepared to pay in wages,
I'm saying to you, by the way, you've got Iwata, you've got Yang. They're all sucking money up. They're not going to be making a telling contribution. If the 3 or 4 that he's got, surely there could be 1 or 2 at the 28 onwards, roughly, that you can maybe say, listen, how about recharging your career again because it's maybe gone off the rails? Or a 32-year-old, by the way, I know you've won this, that, this and the other. How about coming here, like Joe Hart, and being idolised for 3 years of your career? Sometimes it's good fortune because it's a sliding doors moment where they're lucky to get them. But sometimes you have to go for experience.
Like a Jamie Vardy type, something like that?
It could be.
They have tried it as well. Look at James McCarthy.
James McCarthy is a deal that I don't. No. James
times.
McCarthy is a deal that I don't think anybody in their right mind will comment on, right? For obvious reasons. James McCarthy hasn't kicked a ball for Celtic.
But that's what I mean. But the thinking behind it was similar to that.
Yeah, but it's got to be a more experienced one.
When you're making the signings, you're sitting around. What are we making these signings for? Are we making them for the Premiership? Or are we making them to be better, as being better in Europe?
It's
and
Europe,
that's the kind of player. But sure, I mean, you're going on about, Rangers should go for Shankland.
Yes.
Why should Celtic not go for Shankland?
The
price range, surely it's ideal.
I don't know if Celtic have maybe looked and said, maybe we will. I don't know. But I'm saying right now, of the affordable things, if Jack Butland's going out the door, which I think he will go, I would look at it and say, right, where can we get quick fixes that can help this starting 11 be better? Shankland's available. He's a Rangers fan. Go get him.
I would sign a boy Armstrong for Kilmarnock as well if I was Rangers.
Same here.
I think he's better than what they've got.
Yep.
I think he's better than Scott.
I agree with you.
And guys
That's
like
what a director of football's for. He should be scouring the whole of Europe for the player that you're talking about. He should be coming up, identifying guys who are top of the league or player of the year, and whatever it is, Slovenia, Slovakia, whatever. They should be out there. That's their job, to scour Europe, because they obviously know what's here and they know what's done in England and they know the value and they know the wages. I mean, that's why Celtic got a quick hit with the Japanese boys.
Yeah.
Because whoever identified them knew they were good enough for a season or two here on relative wages, you know, and that was a masterstroke coming in, because when they came in, they were absolutely superb.
I think Celtic fans have had a little taste of really good period against Lazio, really good period against at home Real Madrid, and they thought, wow, we like this football. That's what we want. We want high press, but we want somebody who doesn't panic when he's on the ball. If I'm looking at Rangers and Celtic, I've offered you my honest assessment of what I think Rangers need. As far as I'm concerned, Celtic need 2 players in that back 4. Celtic need something of quality and experience in the middle of the park as well. Not to rely on the qualities of the best midfielder in the last 4 years in Scotland, who's Callum McGregor. They need a little bit of quality there, and they definitely need a better striker to help Kyogo. And of course, we all know he needs a goalkeeper. So I'm rhyming off 4 or 5 positions that they need to supplement that squad with. And of course, the other thing, which a lot of people will not know, and it's about to come, because Ali and I will be documenting it, Rangers and Celtic will suddenly say, we've let him go for an undisclosed fee. He's away in a free. He's gone. All the mistakes are quickly out the door. And then what happens is, in comes the PR spin on, and we've signed this guy, and he's going to be brilliant. He's the next Henrik Larsson. He's the next Ali McCoist. You've heard it all before. The first thing I teach my journalists, don't believe PR spin. Don't let your eyes deceive you. Watch it. And the great judge of that are Rangers and Celtic fans. Because see, after 3 or 4 games, they know, they can see a player. The majority of sensible fans can see a player and they know what he does on the park. And you can posture, you can flick your jersey up, you can point at your name. It matters not a jot. Go and score goals, go and win games. No fan is fooled by all that gesticulating and badge kissers.
So I missed that. Is the big striker a buyer then? At 6 million?
Well,
are you taking him at 6 million?
I think they will buy him.
Definitely,
I think they definitely will buy him.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, apart from that, we get things wrong. We try and offer balance. You know, every now and then, because it's our own channel, we can throw in the odd word to try and wake you 3 up. But
I may be wrong, but I am really wrong, said Peter.
Yes, well, absolutely. Well, I've been wrong. I've been barred. God, I've been everything this year.
I've been down to swear for 10 years.
So we move on. Give us your thoughts, Rangers fans, Celtic fans. 5, 6, 7 players, quality. Why was Brendan Rodgers brought back? He's proved his worth. He deserves that little moment to gloat for anybody who was his critic. Fair play to him, let him have it. But he was there. Is he there for Europe, or is he just there to win the league? These are points that we like to put to you on a regular basis. Give us your thoughts on it, and we'll be happy to answer them. And thank you again for your support. Some agree with it, some don't. Give us your thoughts on Philippe Clement and the job that he's facing at Rangers. And of course, because it's the Scottish Cup final, it was the last game. Obviously, we're going to focus on the 2 clubs who played the last game of the domestic season. If you're a Hearts or a Hibs or an Aberdeen fan, a Kilmarnock, St Mirren, what do you want this season? What do you think you're going to get? And overall, I think a question that every football fan can answer, which Tam has pointed out, the standard of the league. Has it dropped so significantly? Are you happy with the football you're watching at your club? All the questions that we like to ask you. Before we move on to Ross County against Raith Rovers, may I just add at this point, Alison and the rest of our team of reporters will be here in the studio, and we're going to be out there in Germany, live from Germany at the Euros, backing Steve Clarke in Scotland. And I do hope you can hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and join us for our coverage of Scotland's games in the Euros, Germany to open with, and of course Switzerland and Hungary to look forward to as well. So if you want to follow the football, then keep it right here. Wherever you are, we are, is the motto for this summer and beyond. Ross County, Raith Rovers, in the end, your old mate just couldn't beat the quality that County had to offer.
Yeah, I think the first leg killed them. I think that the Raith Rovers had to take a lead up there to Dingwall. Ross County have been strong at home this season. You've seen that. They beat Rangers and deservedly so not that long ago. Strong at home. Raith never performed over 2 legs. But I don't know if it was a long season, tired, or Ross County were just better. And I think that maybe a mix of both. I think Ross County looked superior over the 2 legs. They looked They look bigger, stronger, more physical, technically better. And he'll be disappointed. I think that, as I said, just after the Premier League finished, that he to fancy St Johnstone. I think Ross County were a little bit unfortunate not to stay up when they're, in the league campaign rather than going into playoffs. But Ian Stock's high. He's a great season with Raith Rovers. Peter, they've ran Dundee United close. Can they go again next season with Raith Rovers, or is he maybe looking to go somewhere else? I don't know.
Do you think it's time for him to get out? Well,
I think when your stock's high, Peter, as a player or a manager, that is maybe an avenue for you to leave. I don't know if Ian will get that at Raith Rovers, but for me, I'd be looking if I was him to maybe move on.
Ross County, great credit to them. They stepped up to the plate in both legs, and of course, just prior to that, there's nothing better than a man steps in to the caretaker role in Don Cowie and guides them to safety. Safety, which Roy McGregor reckons could be worth around £2.5 million for the club next season. I think Don Cowie is now ready to discuss the position as permanent manager.
He's seen me as the person taking this club going forward several weeks ago, but we both agreed, and we're aligned in terms of we didn't think it was, needed to be the focus to do any distractions. Our pure focus was on making sure we kept this club in the Premier League, and then we said once we do that, we can have a proper conversation, and I'm sure that's what we'll do now.
It's a good conversation to have now that he's saved them.
Yeah, not just saved them, but saved them quite emphatically. A very comfortable win for them in the end to stay up, and yeah, I think we would all anticipate now that he'll be permanent manager next season.
Yeah, and if Raith Rovers are looking for that blueprint to try and copy, Ian Murray reckons it is indeed what Ross County are doing.
Look at the goals, really good strikes. They put you to the sword if you give them opportunities, and that's the lower end of the Premier League, and again, that's what we aspire to get to that level one day. But in terms of endeavour and effort and appetite and discipline, I thought our players were excellent.
Yeah, just didn't have that wee bit of quality.
I think Ross County had the strikers, the quality strikers who took their chances when it came along. I thought Raith Rovers had 2 or 3. I think Ross Laidlaw had 2 or 3 super saves that might have given them a wee bit of hope, but Ross County got the goals at the right time, and you're right, there was a gap there, and particularly with the home advantage.
Yeah.
See, we talked about it before. I think the playoffs this year particularly has given us another excuse to look at league reconstruction. I think there's teams now like Falkirk, Dunfermline, Raith Rovers talking about 10,000 at a game, 9,000 at a game. Can you imagine they were in the Premiership?
Yeah.
What they would bring to the table, it would be absolutely fantastic.
I mean, it's we talk about marketing and spin. Neil Doncaster and his team have got a tough job trying to sell this product, Ali. We all look at it, and as far as watching the product week in, week out, you and I go to so many games and we think, God, the standard is murder. I mean, I will never get the 90 minutes back that I watched Aberdeen against Livingston at Pittodrie on a Wednesday night. I remember at one point looking over at Willie Miller, who was clearly 70, and I thought, Willie, you should get stripped and get on, because I'd pay to see you, because it was absolutely dire. So they are marketing the hell out of it to try and get more money, and fair play to that whole board for trying to do it. The standard at times has been dreadful.
Yeah, the standard's been poor this season and last season. I thought the standard was poor, but the only way it gets better is with more money coming in. It's a chicken and egg situation, I think, until clubs have more resources, then we are where we are.
Yeah, I'll tell you where we are down south, Ruffy. Even if you win a trophy, you're getting sacked. I mean, Ten Hag must be looking and thinking, I've won 2 trophies, I've got them into the Europa League, but I'm going to get the boot.
Yeah, but how sharp his comment was, I'll just go somewhere else and win trophies.
I mean, it really is brutal down there. I mean, Pochettino for Chelsea steadies what I would have called a rotten ship full of overpaid players who contribute nothing, and he looked as if he was starting to steady it into a semblance of a football team, and he's gone.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think the managers down there know, the biggest deal you can get, give me a 6-year contract, that would be great. Getting a couple of years, you're out the window. What would be, I'll go somewhere else. But I think even the Barcelona boys, we'd told he's only got a season. and he hasn't even started. They've already told him he's leaving.
Yeah, Xavi.
Yeah, so I mean that's just the way it is at the top.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where, I must have mentioned him before the season ends, I wonder where David Moyes will end up. I thought I'd give him old mucker a mention.
I think he'll end up back at West Ham next December when they're in the bottom 3. That's a prediction you can save.
Yeah, I'm going to save that little clip. Just before we go, I've got to mention, because I think, great credit to yourself, Alison, Kerry and Cheryl, and the entire team working on the women's football show, because quite simply, we've absolutely given it our all. And great credit to you guys for the people who've been in the studio, and of course our coverage of the women's game. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I think, what we need from a perspective of next season surely is to somehow generate enough interest to get more and more fans back to it.
Yeah, again, it comes back to money. Everything comes back down to money, because at the minute you have a real discrepancy between teams who are full-time and those who are still offering part-time salaries, and I think it's reflective in probably top 6 and bottom 6 what the gulf is. I think what the league really desperately needs is to be able to offer a full-time structure across the board. I think if that happens, it will be a much more competitive league. I think it raises the standard of everyone. I think with that comes more supporter interaction, participation and getting around. But we're talking, I think if I was involved at any, I'm busy today, I'm doing my recruitment side and now I'm doing my other side, but if I was involved in any aspect of women's football, either at a domestic club or at the SFA, I'd go down to Arsenal. I'd go to Arsenal and sit for a month and say, how did you do it? How did you go across the last decade from 1,000 people at a Champions League game to consistently selling out the Emirates, to using the Emirates as your home base for your women's team next season, confident that you're going to sell that out? What's happened in that decade to put you where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. I also, if I can throw my tuppence worth in, because obviously I think the PFA deserve tremendous credit, because in the last couple of years, that group has embraced under the umbrella women's football. I think collectively we need to try and change the mindset of people who just wouldn't give it the time of day.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a perception that the standard is poor and all the rest of it. There are arguments to be made and for and against that. But the other thing, the quality of the top flight men's league is poor too, but people still go along to support. There's an entertainment in it. The women's league, the SWPL post-split, is the most competitive league in Europe. So it might fall short in terms of quality in certain aspects, but not in terms of entertainment.
I don't know if you could have asked for a better finish to it. Rangers and Celtic, finally ending the dominance of Glasgow City, going head to head. It was down to the wire.
Come down to a 90th minute goal last Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got a brilliant one-to-one with Amy Gallagher. I don't want to compliment you too much in your great work since you signed for PLZ, because obviously then you'll suffer the animosity of these two, because they don't like somebody who is special. As simple as that. They just want them leather. Rangers deserving of their win yesterday?
Yeah, thoroughly. I thought Hart's played in snapshots and moments without ever really testing the goalkeeper. I thought Rangers were dominant. I think 2-0 probably flattered Hearts.
And the woman who won the Manager of the Year had the great fortune of interviewing Jo Potter. I found her very engaging and really great for our women's game up here. She was delighted that Philippe Clement was there to watch her Rangers side win the Scottish Cup.
What he said, it was good for him to be able to come and watch us lift a trophy. The same with John Bennett. It was like it's super important for the club to have us winning trophies and being here to experience that with us, because it means a lot to them, and you can see it means a lot to them when they speak to us. Being in attendance at these games and showing faith in us the whole season and the backing that they gave us. So yeah, it's disappointing that the result that they had yesterday, but again on the same breath he's saying it's super important and super proud for us to be able to lift that trophy for the club today.
Yeah, well done to Jo Potter and Rangers. Well done to Brendan Rodgers and Celtic for lifting the Scottish Cup and completing a double of Premiership and Scottish Cup. As ever, it's been an unbelievable season, but it continues. Ruffy, have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I think obviously we're talking about the quality's not there, but you don't need to have quality to have a really exciting games. And I think the playoffs have been good. I think the league run-in was good, turning back and forward. So yeah, I think it's been a good season.
Sam?
Yep, an exciting season. It makes a change. Celtic obviously dominating the last few seasons. Had to work really hard for it this season, I thought. came strong at the end with a great run. But it was nip and tuck for most of the season when Michael Beale left. It swung both ways. So no, I think it's been an exciting season and exciting at the bottom as well. Obviously Livingston were down early doors, but the battle with Ross County and St Johnstone, and then the playoff game. So no, I've enjoyed it. Good season.
And perhaps a lesson to many a young footballer and pundit as well is if you just keep relentlessly bashing your opponent, you eventually get selected for European Championship duty, and he doesn't.
It is. Obviously, I've got a strong opinion on things, and Ruffy's just vanilla. So that's why I'm going, and he's going up north to see Senga.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you said Senga. Ali, what a season, and more of it to continue for us. How have you enjoyed the transition from the written team? I mean, it must have, hey, talking about a black sheep, from the written game to the broadcast.
Yeah, it's a completely different skill set, I'd have to say. Have a bit more respect for you now.
Yeah, thank you. It's only taken you 20 years. Thanks to everyone who offered Alison their support on our social media over the course of the season. I thought I was going to have to get you a bulletproof vest at one point.
Still got it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a good season, but it continues. We're at the Euros. Tam will be there with myself and Kerry, and our backroom team and AJ will be out there as well. It's going to be absolutely magnificent. Really looking forward to you joining us for that, and hopefully you will download the app and all the stuff will be there at your fingertips as well. So it's going to be a summer of football, backing Scotland all the way, and then over and above that, we'll be back for the new season bigger and better as well. Thank you for your support on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, download the app, download the podcast, and wherever you are, we are. Thank you for listening and watching.
Auf Wiedersehen.